You're listening to the Philosopher's Note on the man who tapped the secrets of the universe. More wisdom in less time.
Hi, this is Brian. Welcome to the Philosopher's Notes on The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe by Glenn Clark. We'll start with a quote. "The life triumphant is that which places what a man gives to the world in creative expression far ahead of that which he takes from it of the creation of others." That's Walter Russell being quoted from The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. This book is written by Glenn Clark, although the quotes that I'm going to be sharing are all from Walter Russell. The book is about the man who tapped the secrets of the universe. That man is Walter Russell. You ever heard of him? Fascinating guy. A multifaceted 20th century genius who beautifully describes the source of his mojo in this great little book by Glenn Clark. So don't you think it's a little weird that our culture seems to celebrate the cubicle man more than the Renaissance man? Me too. And if you're into connecting to God, universal intelligence, whatever you want to call it, to express your inner Renaissance soul in this precious little life of ours, I think you'll dig the book. It's a tiny 61 pages, but remarkably packed with inspiration and wisdom. I trust you'll enjoy Walter Russell's perspective on genius as much as I do, and I vote we dive straight in to the big ideas. We'll start with the first big idea. Consummate genius is within you. Quote, "I believe that every man has consummate genius within him. Some appear to have it more than others only because they are aware of it more than others are. And the awareness or unawareness of it is what makes each one of them into masters or holds them down to mediocrity. I believe that mediocrity is self-inflicted and that genius is self-bestowed." End quote. Wow. Mediocrity is self-inflicted. Genius is self-bestowed. So, which one are you choosing? Choose wisely. Hint, you're a genius. Pick that one. All right, the next big idea is 3 qualities of the genius. Quote, "Every successful man or great genius has 3 particular qualities in common. The most conspicuous of these is that they all produce a prodigious amount of work. The second is that they never know fatigue. And the third is that their minds grow more brilliant as they grow older instead of less brilliant. Great men's lives begin at 40, where the mediocre man's life ends. The genius remains an ever-flowing fountain of creative achievement until the very last breath he draws." End quote. That's so great. As I write this, I'm approaching my 35th birthday, and I'm giddy about the truth of this statement. I can feel my power coalescing, and I'm excited to see what the decades have in store. The good news is that regardless of where we are in our life journey, the fact remains that our power grows as we grow. As we become more and more aware of the divine intelligence flowing through us and make a conscious effort to plug into it more and more consistently, our mojo builds and our creative output builds with us. Let's check out some big ideas on how to make that so. Next one is focused intention. Quote, "The thinking of creative and successful men is never exerted in any direction other than that intended. That is why great men produce such a prodigious amount of work, seemingly without effort and without fatigue. The amount of work such men leave to posterity is amazing." End quote. Alexander Graham Bell says it this way, "Concentrate all your thoughts on the task at hand. The sun's rays do not burn until brought to a focus." While Johann Wolfgang von Goethe says, "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least." How about you? Do you consciously focus your energy on your core intentions, that which matters most to you? Or are you dissipating your energy on the things which matter least? Become aware, focus, and create like a genius that you are. All right, the next big idea is absolute trust in universal intelligence. Quote, "I have absolute faith," he asserts over and over again, "that anything can come to one who trusts the unlimited help of the universal intelligence that is within. So long as one works within the law, always gives more to others than they expect, and does it cheerfully and courteously. End quote. Amen. How's your trust in the unlimited help of the universal intelligence within? And are you living your highest truths? Giving to others more than they expect? That one's particularly fun, I think. And doing it with a smile? Sweet. Let the good times roll. And have absolute trust in universal intelligence as they do. All right, the next big idea is self plus universal self. Quote, I never let the thought of failure enter my mind. My knowledge of my unity with the universal one, and the fact that I must do this thing, and the inspired belief I should do it, as a demonstration of my belief in man's unlimited power, made me ignore the difficulties that lay in the way. End quote. So Walter Russell was a painter who had never touched clay until he was 56 years old, when, for various reasons, he found himself in a position where he needed to sculpt a bust of Thomas Edison. He continues describing his drive from New York to Florida, where he did this work. He said, quote, I spent the entire time absorbed in inspirational meditation with the universal source of all inspiration, in order to fully realize the omnipotence of the self within me, as a preparation for doing in a masterly way what I would otherwise be unable to do. If I had followed the usual procedure of the superficially minded man and played bridge all the way down to Florida, or otherwise enslaved my mind by sidetracking it from its creative purpose, I would have failed. In fact, I knew in advance from long experience in trying to achieve the unachievable that meditation and communion between myself and the universal self was the only way to achieve that impossibility. End quote. Wow. And the resulting sculpture, there's a picture of it in the book, is stunning. The sculpture he did of Thomas Edison, it was the first time he ever worked with clay, and it's absolutely amazing. One of the greatest achievements of his career, in fact. So there's so much I love here with this quote. First, the fact that he took inspiration from his belief that he should do great work as a demonstration of his belief in man's unlimited power. That's just cool. And totally resonant with the adage I'm embracing these days that the world needs demonstration more than it needs instruction. It's so easy to talk about all these great noble truths. It's an entirely different thing to not only embody them, but do so as a demonstration of what humanity is capable of. That's really powerful. Of course, I also dig the idea that he chose to insulate himself from the normal, superficial distractions so that he could commune with the universal source of inspiration, without which he would have failed. I think it's simply impossible to create anything really interesting, meaningful, if we're constantly bombarding ourselves with this distraction and that distraction, whether it's vegging out in front of the TV or sharing another glass of wine with friends or whatever. If we're committed to expressing our genius with the world, we've got to invest one-on-one time with the divine. So, how are you doing with that? Get on it. The next big idea is the inch to greatness. Quote, early in life I found that to achieve greatness, one had to go only 1 inch beyond mediocrity. But that 1 inch is so hard to go that only those who become aware of God in them can make the grade. For no one can achieve that 1 inch alone. End quote. Brilliant. So how do we team up with God to take that 1 inch journey together? Stillness. In Russell's words, quote, if you were alone long enough to get thoroughly acquainted with yourself, you will hear whisperings from the universal source of all consciousness, which will inspire you. End quote. Here's another way to embrace stillness. Next big idea, lock yourself up in a room. Quote, lock yourself up in your room, or go out in the woods where you can be alone. When you are alone, the universe talks to you in flashes of inspiration. You will find that you will suddenly know things which you never knew before. All knowledge exists in the God mind and is extended into this electrical universe of creative expression through desire. Knowledge is yours for the asking. You have but to plug into it. End quote. Have you locked yourself up in a room lately? I do it every morning now, and I know that my hour of silence is one of my most powerful ways to plug into Source. So I'm handing you the key, pointing to a room for you to go lock yourself into it, and smiling. Go lock yourself up in a room and get inspired. The next big idea is mastery plus love. Quote, he also believes that every man should be master of anything he does and should do it in a masterly manner with love, no matter what it is, whether physical work, menial or boring work, or inspirational work. End quote. That's Glenn Clark describing Walter Russell. Reminds me of Khalil Gibran, and you can see the notes on the Prophet. He says, quote, work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake bitter bread that feeds but half a man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing though as angels and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. End quote. So how do you approach your work? In a masterly manner and with love? Good. Glenn Clark says this as well about Russell, quote, with an overwhelming desire for intensive expression, a love of all tasks of every nature, and a deep love of life and of all people and things in life, he believes that every person can remain vital and effervescent throughout one's entire life. End quote. Let's check out some more mojo on this. Next big idea is loving what we must do. Quote, there should be no distasteful tasks in one's life. If you just hate to do a thing, that hatred for it develops body-destructive toxins, and you become fatigued very soon. You must love anything you must do. Do it not only cheerfully, but also lovingly, in the very best way you know how. That love of the work which you must do anyhow will vitalize your body and keep you from fatigue. End quote. Magical. Seneca and Buddha and many others say the same thing. Seneca says, quote, there is nothing the wise man does reluctantly. And Buddha says, if anything is worth doing, do it with all your heart. So is there something that you must do that you're doing with ickness? How can you bring love to it, starting now? And while you're at it, see if you can take it this far. Walter Russell says, a menial task which must be mine, that shall I glorify and make an art of it. And that reminds me of George Leonard's brilliant book, Mastery. You can see the notes. He says, could all of us reclaim lost hours of our lives by making everything, the commonplace along with the extraordinary, a part of our practice? End quote. As they say, how we do anything is how we do everything. The fact is, if we're truly committed to living a life less ordinary, we've got to embrace the moment-to-moment-to-moment opportunities to bring our best to the world. It's the aggregate of those little things that make the great. And there's simply no way we're going to do the big things well if we only give ourselves part way to the mundane. The next big idea, defeats equal stepping stones to success. Quote, I have had my share of what one calls defeat in plenty. I have made and lost fortunes and seen great plans of mine topple through my own errors of judgment or through other causes. But I do not recognize these as defeats. They are but interesting experiences of life. They are valuable stepping stones to success. Defeat is a condition which one must accept in order to give it reality. I refuse to give it reality by accepting it. In my philosophy, I have written these words, defeat I shall not know. It shall not touch me. I will meet it with true thinking. Resisting it will be my strengthening. But if perchance the day will give to me the bitter cup, it will sweeten in the drinking. End quote. So can I get an amen on that one, please? Thank you. Marcus Aurelius, the 2nd century Roman emperor, Stoic philosopher, you can see the notes on Meditations, said pretty much the same thing. He said, quote, so here's a rule to remember in future. When anything tempts you to feel bitter, not this is a misfortune, but to bear this worthily is a good fortune. End quote. Back to you again. Are you seeing defeats as nothing more than interesting experiences of life that are, in fact, valuable stepping stones to success? Or are you not only recognizing them as defeats, but replaying them over and over and over again, essentially cutting yourself off from the opportunity to alchemize the experiences into future success? Tony Robbins says, and you can see the notes, success is the result of good judgment. Good judgment is a result of experience. Experience is often the result of bad judgment. End quote. So quite simply, if you want the good judgment that produces success, you've got to be willing to have bad judgment. And if that's the case, you might as well accelerate the process of failing, in quotes, so you can learn what you need to learn, huh? Change your perception and know that your defeats are springboards to your greatest success. The next big idea, we've got two more, is an inner joyousness. Quote, joy and happiness are the indicators of balance in a human machine. Just as a change in the familiar hum in a mechanism immediately indicates an abnormality to the practiced ear of the mechanic. An inner joyousness, amounting to ecstasy, is the normal condition of the genius mind. Any lack of that joyousness develops body-destroying toxins. That inner ecstasy of the mind is the secret fountain of perpetual youth and strength in any man. He who finds it finds omnipotence and omniscience. End quote. I like that a lot. Imagine a mechanic incredibly familiar with his machine. The machine has a familiar hum to it, such that if that hum changes, he knows immediately. Now imagine you're the mechanic and the machine. The hum that you, in your properly functioning state, exude is a state of joy and happiness. In fact, according to Russell, you should be listening for an inner joyousness amounting to ecstasy as the natural rhythm of your life, your machine. This is pretty much exactly what Esther and Jerry Hicks say in all their books, especially The Astonishing Power of Emotions. You can see that note, where they go off on the idea that our emotions are a sixth sense, providing us with what they call an emotional guidance system that gives us moment-to-moment feedback on whether we're in tune with the divine. So what hum shall we listen for? In their words, joy, love, appreciation, enthusiasm, and all that goodness, of course. And I should say, interestingly, the Buddha talks about a hum of his own when he says that life is suffering. The word used to describe our suffering state is dukkha, which represents the screeching hum of a potter's wheel that's a little stuck and no longer spinning freely. Fascinating stuff. Pay attention to your hums. Know when you're on, and you will know when you're on when you feel an inner joyousness. And this leads us to the final big idea, the life triumphant. Quote, the life triumphant is that which places what a man gives to the world in creative expression far ahead of that which he takes from it of the creation of others. And it should be every man's greatest ambition to be that kind of man. With that desire in the heart of every man, there could be no greed or selfish unbalance, nor could there be exploitation of other men, or hatred, or wars, or fear of wars, end quote. Nietzsche says something similar, quote, this is the manner of noble souls. They do not want to have anything for nothing, least of all life. Whoever is of the mob wants to live for nothing. We others, however, to whom life gave itself, we always think about what we might best give in return. One should not wish to enjoy where one does not give joy. End quote. Imagine that, seeking to always give more in our creative acts than we receive in the creation from others. It's amazing. What would your life look like if you lived with that intention? How would you show up in your life, in your work, in your relationships with your spouse or kids or friends or colleagues? Let's imagine walking through every experience of our lives with the intention to give more than we receive. To the life triumphant, my friend. That wraps up the note. I will share a little bit about the subject of The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. Walter Russell suggests some notes you might enjoy and share a handful of the quotes from the sidebar. We'll go with Walter Russell first. He was born in 1871 and died in 1963. He proved convincingly during his lifetime that genius is inherent in everyone. After leaving school at the age of 9 in order to earn money, he very successfully explored, amongst others, music, literature, architecture, painting, sculpture, natural sciences, new ways toward a healthy economy, philosophy, and mysticism, as well as figure skating, horse breeding, and dressage. Together with his wife Lau, he founded a private university for distance learning, the University of Science and Philosophy, which is in Virginia and still exists today. And their home study course in cosmic consciousness has helped many people to unfold their consciousness. That's adapted from walter-russell.org, where you can learn more about this great man. And if you enjoyed this note, I think you'll also enjoy the Philosopher's Notes on Ralph Waldo Emerson, on creative mind and success, the magic of thinking big, ask and it is given, and the astonishing power of emotions. Now, how about some quotes from the side of the PDF? Ask and you shall receive. You must yourself do the asking. The personal ego must be suppressed and replaced with the universal ego. In his pleasures and in distasteful tasks alike, he carried out that principle of demanding masterliness of himself in all things. I believe that when the self of man thus walks and talks with God, he as gradually ascends to the great heights and desires of his ambitions as the tree ascends from its seed. For each is working with the law, and conversely, the law is working with each. When one trusts this inner universal power, it automatically draws forth the trust of the people one deals with. You can become a great creator or a little one as the intensity of your desire is little or great. You have to gather your energy together in the same manner, conserving it and insulating it from dissipation in every direction other than that of your purpose. And finally, mediocrity is self-inflicted. Genius is self-bestowed. Well, hope you enjoyed, and I hereby bestow you a genius. I trust you're doing the same thing for yourself, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Have an awesome day.
We hope you enjoyed this Philosopher's Note. Please go to www.philosophersnotes.com to download more.